In Argentina, lawyers filed complaints before the justice system against President Javier Milei for his involvement in the Libra cryptocurrency scam. In the Democratic Republic of the Congo, the national government confirms the entry of M23 rebels and their Rwandan allies into key territories in North and South Kivu. Russia and the United States agreed on the need to resume talks and address the situations in Ukraine and the Middle East. Hello, welcome from the South. I'm Luis Alberto Matos from the teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. Argentina's justice system confirmed the reception of criminal complaints against the nation's president, Javier Milei, accusing him of being part of a cryptocurrency scam that has become a global scandal. The economist Claudio Lozano has filed the first formal complaint, although would not be the only one, against the move in which the ultra-liberal president promoted a cryptocurrency that then crashed. While Mariano Llorens, president of the Argentinian court, ordered the appointment of a judge to the case, the complaints filed by foreign law firms already exceed 100. This happens as rumors spread regarding the current situation of the head of state, which is said to have locked himself up at the presidential residency. And the Defense for the Single National Union of the Construction and Similar Industries of Panama accused the nation's government of endorsing abuses and violations against the members of the union arrested after protesting for their rights. The 83 workers were provisionally detained after the violent intervention of the police in a demonstration they held against the bill to reform the Social Security Fund. The union's defense also denounced the absence of separation of powers and guarantees for workers and accused the country's president, José Raúl Mulino, of directing the whole operation. They also denounced the move as a political trial that undermines the rule of law in the country.
We have to be prepared for the worst. We have to fight until the end, otherwise, as things are going, the court will surely order the provisional detention of these 83 comrades. So I ask you to remain united, to be strong, because we have to continue this struggle which seems to be long. But based on the law, we will do our best to get our comrades free. Remember that this is a political trial.
In this context, the General Secretary of Soundtrack's trade union, Saúl Méndez, called for massive mobilizations on Thursday.
La Fiscalía no ha terminado de presentar su mamotreto, el mamotreto de Mulino, porque el mamotreto de Mulino.
The prosecution has not managed to present its charges yet, Mulino's charges, because Mulino is behind all. And neither has the false guarantee judge allowed an impartial process. She is biased. She even intervenes in the process as a party, giving advice to the prosecution. So what is the right thing to do? It is necessary to continue resisting, to mobilize in the streets with the people. This Thursday 20th is decisive.
In Colombia's Catatumbo region, thousands of residents face a humanitarian crisis which has worsened in recent days by the violence generated by armed groups. The most affected population in the region are the indigenous communities, since they live in areas at risk of violence caused by the armed conflict, which began on January 16, 2025. Local authorities report that despite the efforts of the municipal governments, the mayor's office have been overwhelmed by the displaced and their financial resources depleted by the magnitude of the crisis. To date, more than 100 people have been killed by armed groups in the Department of Northern Santander and adjacent areas, while another 85,000 have been affected. And on Sunday, a soldier of the Haitian forces and 2 officers of the security brigade were killed after an attack by members of armed criminal groups in the municipality of Kenskov. During the new attack, houses were set on fire and the National Police arrested members of the armed group. A spokesman of the police force, Lionel Lazar, reported that law enforcement personnel have already regained control of the area where the radio antennas are located in the metropolitan region of the Haitian capital. Armed groups want to gain control of the area in order to take off the air some media outlets that are hostile to them and to extort money from the owners. A 5.1 magnitude earthquake was registered during the early hours of Monday in the state of Oaxaca in southern Mexico. The epicenter of the quake was located in Yuchistan de Zaragoza and was reported a few minutes after midnight. So far, no fatalities, injuries, or damage to structures have been reported. The Mexican seismic alert system explained that the alarm did not go off because of the earth movement had not been intense enough. And severe storms, including volcanoes, have unleashed a devastating flooding across the southeastern United States, resulting in at least 9 fatalities, 8 in Kentucky and 1 in Georgia. Kentucky Governor Andy Beshear described the event as one of the most severe weather incidents in the past decade, prompting him to declare a state of emergency. The storms left over 39,000 homes without power across the state, affecting residents' ability to seek safety and assistance. All 120 counties in Kentucky reported significant flooding, with some areas receiving between 3 to 8 inches of rain. Emergency teams have conducted over 1,000 rescues as they respond to the crisis. The situation is particularly dire in eastern Kentucky, which is still recovering from devastating floods in 2022. Let's take our first short break. Remember, you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you'll find news in different formats, news updates, and much more. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back. In the Democratic Republic of the Congo, insecurity worsens in the east. The national government confirms the entry of M23 rebels and their Rwandan allies into key territories in North and South Kivu. An official government statement did not clarify if the rebels remain in the invaded areas. It only said that they are observing the situation. M23 leaders confirmed that they are in control of the cities such as Goma and large areas of North and South Kivu. Over 1 million people are said to be under M23 control, though large waves of Congolese have moved to neighboring nations. Domestic observers fear the breakup of the African nation.
We are getting customers because there aren't many taxis or vehicles. We are told it is because fuel stations are closed. We are still using the fuel reserve that we had. We are not afraid now, but the fear is still there, but we see the people moving about little by little.
And Togo's Electoral Commission has announced the provisional results of the senatorial elections, giving the ruling party 31 of the 54 seats. Dago Jabre, president of the National Independent Electoral Commission, said that 1,723 of the 1,949 municipal and regional councillors eligible to vote had done so. These elections mark the final stage in the drafting of a new constitution promoted by the current president Faure Gnassingbe, and largely boycotted by the opposition, which criticizes the changes that this new constitution could allow the president to circumvent term limits. And the African Union's Commissioner for Political Affairs, Peace and Security, Bankole Adoai, warned of possible breakup of the Democratic Republic of Congo after the M23 armed group entered the city of Bukavu. These statements were made at a press conference on the sidelines of the AU summit in the Ethiopian capital, Addis Ababa, after columns of M23 fighters allied with Rwandan troops entered the center and another key city in Eastern Democratic Republic of the Congo on Sunday. With fears that the offensive could ignite a regional war, the international community has multiplied calls for a de-escalation and ceasefire, so far in vain. It must be noted that the conflict with M23 has lasted more than 3 years.
we are expressing grave concern, that is what our leaders did, on the situation in Eastern DRC, calling for immediate withdrawal of M23 and their supporters from all occupied towns and cities, including Goma Airport. We also express concern that this escalation, this new escalation, should not become an open conflict that would disrupt and impact on humanitarian activities and the already very weakened social fabric in the region.
Also in Ethiopia, the 38th AU Summit adopted the Convention on Ending Violence Against Women and Girls, becoming the first comprehensive continental instrument of its kind to address such actions. The document establishes a comprehensive and legally binding framework for the prevention, elimination, and effective response to all forms of violence against women and girls in Africa. This legal and social victory addresses the root causes and drivers of such violence, strengthening legal and institutional mechanisms and promoting a culture of respect for human rights, gender equality, and dignity, ensuring that African Union member states reinforce a common approach to eliminating such violence. The Hind Rajab Foundation, a legal arm of the Omar 30th movement, has filed a complaint with the International Criminal Court against Israeli Foreign Minister Gideon Sa'ar. The foundation accuses Sa'ar of war crimes and crimes against humanity in connection with Israel's military actions in Gaza since October 7, 2023, alleging that he is complicit with Prime Minister Netanyahu in the mass displacement, starvation, and persecution of Palestinians. With Sa'ar's planned visit to Brussels on February 18th, the HRF urges Belgium to stop him and cooperate with the ICC, citing Belgium's obligations as a signatory to the Rome Statute. The HRF is named after Hind Rajab, a 5-year-old Palestinian girl killed by Israeli forces. And the Arab League has condemned Israel's delays in withdrawing from southern Lebanon. In a statement, Secretary General Ahmed Gulgate warned that any postponement would be a deliberate call for crisis. He stressed that the withdrawal must be complete and on the agreed date. He urged parties guaranteeing the agreement to pressure Israel to fulfill its promise and leave southern Lebanon on schedule. Israel was forced to accept a ceasefire with Hezbollah on November 27th, after suffering losses and failing to achieve its objectives despite killing over 4,000 people in Lebanon. The 60-day truce was extended for 3 weeks until February 18th, after Israeli troops missed the withdrawal deadline. We now have our second short break. Before we invite you to join us on our YouTube channel at teleSUR English, where you'll be able to rewatch our special interviews, top broadcasting, and much more. Hit the subscribe button and activate the notification bell to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. We'll be right back. Welcome back. The governments of Russia and the United States agreed on the need to resume talks, resolve their differences, and address the situations in Ukraine and the Middle East. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov spoke on Monday about the telephone conversation between President Vladimir Putin and his U.S. counterpart Donald Trump, during which the two presidents stressed the need to put behind them a period of bilateral relations that has been described as anomalous. In this context, the Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov said that this Tuesday, the first talks with the U.S. representatives will take place in Saudi Arabia, where they will discuss possible negotiations. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky had already announced his decision not to attend the meeting. He made it clear that he demands European involvement and does not want to enter into negotiations before determining what security guarantees the United States and its allies are prepared to offer to ensure that the ceasefire is not violated. The Ukrainian president has also stated that he will not accept a negotiated peace between Russia and the US. And in this context, the British government is said to be ready to send troops to Kiev. The British proposal aims to protect the security of its territory and the whole of Europe, according to Prime Minister Keir Starmer. The decision taken at the White House and accepted by Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky seems to have taken not only London by surprise, but also all the leaders of the European bloc. According to Starmer's latest statements, security has become the great challenge and is emerging as the crucial topic of the meeting to be held this Monday in the French capital, Paris. In Germany, the 66th Munich Security Conference closed on a sour note for the Europeans. Forum Chairman Christoph Heusgen described it as a nightmare for Europe and closed the conference in tears. The presence of the US Vice President James D. Vance especially upset the Germans. Both Chancellor Olaf Scholz and Vice Chancellor Robert Habeck condemned the US support for pro-Nazi parties and organizations in Germany. The president of the Munich conference went further and said that the Trump administration lives on a different planet and assured that after the Vance conference, the forum may no longer be a transatlantic initiative because there are no longer common values between Europe and the United States. And veterans of the German anti-fascist movement, Grannies Against the Right, have ramped up their demonstrations ahead of federal elections on February 23rd. The actions come as polls show the far-right AfD party at a record 20% or higher. Most of the group's members either have early childhood memories of Nazi Germany and grew up amid the rubble of the devastated and shamed country, now determined to warn younger generations of the dangers of political extremism. The Hamas movement has become a force to be reckoned with as right-wing extremism is on the rise again.
I hope that everyone will vote for a Democratic Party on the 23rd. But I also find it very important to criticize the Democratic parties. So, it's really difficult. But one party is definitely not allowed to get the vote, and that is the one, this right-wing extremist AfD. I can't even name it.
The grannies against the right are actually very important. They are older people, some of whom probably lived up to the 1945 period themselves. Some of them are really very old. And they simply stand up for human rights, against racism, against discrimination, against hatred. And I think that's very important and very supportive.
In Cuba, the president of the National Assembly of Venezuela, Jorge Rodriguez, presented his book, Rio Quemado, during the Havana International Book Fair. During the presentation of his literary work, Rodriguez explained that the book is based on an extensive poem which is interwoven between each of its chapters, showing a conversation between an 11-year-old boy and the pain and terror of his father's murder. In this sense, Rodriguez points out that this work has served to exorcise many things that, at some time, were difficult to deal with. During the presentation, the Venezuelan Minister of Communication, Freddy Ñañez, was also present and emphasized that the book fair in Cuba represents the defense of dignity and a response to all those who try to silence the voice of the people.
Efectivamente, la Feria del Libro de Cuba es mucho más que una feria del libro.
Indeed, the Cuban Book Fair is much more than a book fair. It is an exercise in dignity, a defense of beauty, and a response to the scoundrels and savages who seek to silence an entire people. It is a fair that it is a moral choice and for which we in Latin America are grateful. Today, we at La Sirena Publishing House are celebrating because we have a stand here in Cuba, thanks to the generosity of the Cuban Book Institute, and we hope that this edition reach young people and Cuban readers.
Ediciones lleguen a la juventud y a los lectores cubanos, a las lectoras cubanas. Pero además tenemos la presentación de la segunda.
But we are proud to also present the second edition of the book Rio Quemado by the writer, political poet, and psychiatrist Jorge Rodriguez Gomez.
político.
And in a special interview for our news multi-platform TeleSUR, the President of the National Assembly of Venezuela, Jorge Rodriguez, talked about his experience presenting the book at the fair.
It is always a pleasure to come to this free land, to the land of Fidel, to the land of Raúl, and also to one of the most important book fairs in the world. Without a doubt, one of the most important in our continent. For its persistence, for the strength it presents, for the great variety of titles, and the great numbers of activities that take place at this fair. So I feel deeply proud and grateful that I have been able to come here to present the pages that I have been working on over the years. Here we have come to present a collection of poems, which is very meaningful to me, which is a poem dedicated to my father. Today, the anniversary of his birth. We have presented the book Río Quemado, which is a long conversation throughout the book between an 11-year-old boy and the pain and the fear that the murder of his father meant.
We are from the end of this news briefing. You can find this and many other news on our website at telesurenglish.net. So join us on our social media, Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, I'm Luis Alberto Matos. Thanks for watching.